Okay, so this is going to be probably one of our last lectures for CJUS 444, White Collar Crime. Um, this is going to be, the lecture is going to involve half of stuff that ain't going to be in the text and half stuff that will be in the text. So you want to pay particular attention to the lecture, make sure you're taking good notes and such. So we're almost there. We're coming up to the last mile here, more or less, for white collar crime. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with quiz number 4 here. Then we'll have quiz 5, and then our tests and our final. Remember, everything is kind of cumulative in the class, so you're going to see questions that you've already perhaps answered in previous tests and quizzes. Okay, so one thing I do like to cover in white collar crime, uh, it's kind of explained under PC4, literally 4 of the Penal Code. It's spirit of the law versus letter of the law. There are times where we as police officers have, I guess, kind of self determination, a little wiggle room, more or less, on whether or not we could arrest or write a citation, anything like that. Um, in a way, it seems like a lot of power and authority, but it's more than that. It's we could look at each individual situation and make a separate determination. There are some things we really don't have any say so. For example, domestic violence. If we have a domestic violence incident, there's injury. You're pretty much going to have to make an arrest on that. But say like a traffic ticket, we have something known as the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, and we deal with this often in white collar crime. The spirit of the law. What is the law trying to get us to do? Speed laws, for example. What are speed laws all about? Speed laws are all about getting people to drive safely, to drive the speed limit. Um, so that's our bottom line. That's what we want. The letter of the law says if you violate that section, then, in most cases, you're going to be fined or sanctioned in some way. Uh, so think about this. You're in a 45 zone. You're doing 46 miles an hour. Police officer pulls you over. You get a ticket for 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Would you say that's a spirit of the law or a letter of the law ticket? Well, of course, it's going to be a letter of the law because that would be kind of silly writing someone for a mile over. Kind of on the other side, what if I have some guy driving 50 miles an hour in a 30 zone, let's say? And we don't see a ton of traffic. There are no obvious safety concerns like kids going to school, old people crossing the street, those sort of things. We pull this guy over, and right away he tells us, "Oh my gosh, officer, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was going that fast. My wife is at the hospital. She's in labor. I realized I should have been paying attention better. I'm so sorry, but I understand if you need to write me a ticket." Well, certainly we as police officers have, again, the privilege of determining whether or not you're issued a ticket. In that case, if we didn't issue this person a ticket, that would be the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law saying, okay, he was speeding, but in a way, I don't want to say he had a reason, but there was a better than nothing reason that he was speeding, and he certainly seemed willing to kind of deal with the consequences. So think of letter of the law as a precise, exact thing. What it says in this book, if you kind of venture outside of what the words in this book or section say, I'm going to arrest you, I'm going to cite you. That's just how it is. Okay. On the other hand, you may have in fact violated a law or policy. However, we're going to choose not to give you a citation or make an arrest. Perhaps we issue warnings. In my career, I gave a lot of warnings. Doesn't mean I didn't write tickets too, but I certainly was a big believer in the warnings. The warnings are a perfect example of spirit of the law, what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to, in traffic violations, we're trying to achieve safety of our drivers on the road. Okay. Another thing I like to talk about, and you're not going to find in the book, is something I call, and it is known as, a gray area crime. I always like to say that police work itself, criminal law, is in a gray area. There really is no black and white. Kind of like spirit of the law versus letter of the law, there's this line, thick line of gray in between perhaps what's illegal and what's not. So one of the things I talk about as far as gray area crime is something like identity theft protection. Who do we have out there? These LifeLock dudes. LifeLock. I mean, really, what does LifeLock do? LifeLock, well, it protects your identity. Oh, if you're ever a victim of identity theft, we'll make sure you're okay. We'll make sure you're not held financially responsible. Well, that's all great, but we have federal and state laws that do that already. So what are you doing? What are you selling? You're basically selling something that already exists. I can't even think of a good comparison that would be reasonable. But if you were to join up, say, and I'm not saying that LifeLock doesn't have some value. It does have some value. If it makes you feel comfortable, if it gives you some sort of peace of mind, then it does have a value. However, from a practical standpoint, something like LifeLock or these identity theft protection systems that you pay for, first thing they're going to do is when you find out you're a victim of identity theft, you're going to call them up. And they're going to tell you, oh, great. So, yeah, we're so glad you called us. Here's what we need you to do. We need you to right away go down and make a police report. Well, duh. That's what keeps you from being held financially responsible for the identity theft. So they're basically just going to tell you the things you need to do and those things that would keep you from being financially responsible without their service. So I call it a gray area crime because it isn't really a violation of law per se. It isn't theft. I think in some ways it could be kind of deceitful, but it doesn't raise to a level where it's just a in-your-face theft or fraud. So I try to tell people these are these gray area frauds where we know it's probably not 100% right. You wouldn't sell this to your own mother, sort of thing, but they do exist out there. So we always try to make sure you guys understand kind of this gray area. Okay. One thing I like to talk about, I believe this is in the book, but I like to explain it a little bit differently. Conflict of interest. What is a conflict of interest? We're hearing a lot about it right now with all the shenanigans going on with politics and all of that. But from a more base level regarding crime, conflict of interest can be something like, let's say we have a city councilman, okay, or a county supervisor who owns who owns some sort of construction company, let's just say, owns a big construction company. Now, that councilman bids on a job, perhaps with a city or county, because, they're, in a lot of cases, these are only part-time councilmen or supervisors. But he or she bids on this job with the insight that they know what the lowest bid is. That's a conflict of interest. They shouldn't be involved in that. In the same way, maybe their spouse, maybe the city wants to award a catering contract, and one of the council people's or supervisors' husbands or wives owns a catering business. Having that husband or wife participate in the bidding process with perhaps inside information, and we find that out, could certainly be considered a conflict of interest. So that's really, I mean, nuts and bolts of what a conflict of interest is. Basically, something that gives this person an unfair advantage over everybody else in what would normally be a fair and impartial bidding process. Okay. Oh, just kind of going through this. Discount crime, or sometimes what we call discounting. This is one I argue with a lot of people about because some people just don't think it's an issue, but it is. Discount crime, discount theft, discounting. All three of those terms are used. What is it? Okay, so say I work at a taco shop. Okay, I love tacos. So what I do is I get a discount. I'm just an employee. I'm not the owner of the taco shop. I'm just an employee. Well, I happen to get 50% off of any taco for myself. As an employee, I'm allowed to purchase a taco and I only have to pay 50 cents. That's a benefit given to me as an employee of this taco business. Okay. The owner certainly wouldn't want me going around letting everybody have 50% off. Otherwise, he or she wouldn't be making profit. So what I do is I tell all my friends to come on by and I hook them up, right? I hook them up with a 50% discount. So my friends are coming by all day. Let's say I have 50 friends show up on a Saturday to my taco shop that I work at as an employee, and I give them all my 50% discount. Okay, so that's 100 tacos. Each taco costs what? What does a taco cost? Okay, these are really good tacos, so let's say $5. Um, and I purchase the tacos for $2.50 because I get a 50% discount. So throughout the day, I sell 100 tacos to my friends who are not employees of the taco business, and I give them all tacos for $2.50. Okay, how much have I stolen? Okay, it's $250 unless my math is wrong, and if it is, I'm sure someone will let me know. But $250. So did I steal $250? Yes, I did. The discount was not intended for these other people, these other 100 people. The discount was only intended for the employees. We see this quite a bit with much higher cost items, say like, you see it with car parts, things like that. People will extend their own personal employee discount to other folks. Now, if the business owner is okay with that, kind of friends of friends discount, that's okay. It's perfectly okay. But if the business owner does not allow you to discount to your friends and family, for example, then it's a theft. You're stealing from the company. You may not be yourself putting $250 in your pocket, but you're taking $250 profit from the company and giving it to other folks, basically. So discounting is a crime. I put people in jail for it. It's usually more than $250, just so you know. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through this to make sure that we cover everything we need to cover. What's a bribe? Have people tried to bribe me before? Sure they have. Yeah, I work for the government. I am in a position of trust. Yeah, there are times I've had people try to bribe me. Pull you over and you're speeding, you're doing something silly, whatever it is. And I don't make a lot of traffic stops, but sometimes I do. And I walk up to you and you're handing me your driver's license with $100 bill. Okay, can't do that. That's a crime. You're offering a bribe. If I were to accept it, I'd be accepting a bribe, and I would certainly be committing a crime, and I'd go to jail. Okay. So basically, kind of the simple definition of a bribe, and I'm going to read this so you guys could note this. The core concept of a bribe is an inducement improperly influencing the performance of a public function meant to be gratuitously exercised. Gratuitously exercised. Okay. So, what we're talking about is someone trying to get me to do something for money, usually. A public function, that's what my job is. If I'm making an arrest, if I'm doing a citation, anything like that. Think of like code compliance. They come by to check your detached garage that you just built. You have to have that inspected, and perhaps you didn't do everything up to code. If you were to tell that code inspector, the inspector, hey, you know what? I'll give you $500 if you just make this thing pass. When you know, in fact, it isn't ready to be passed, then that would be a bribe. Okay, so we want to make sure we understand that. Okay, let's talk a little bit briefly about sweatshops. Remember Martha Stewart? She's like pure gangster. She did time and the whole bit. This is kind of the motherly figure that we remember. She had a whole line of products and home improvement stuff and all sorts of cool stuff. But what a lot of people didn't know is that Martha was out there basically using sweatshops. Again, I'm going to give you the precise definition of a sweatshop so that you can jot it down and make sure you study it for the test. But the actual definition is factories in developing countries where employees, often women and sometimes children, work under miserable conditions for pitiful wages to produce clothing and other products sold to Westerners, that being us, in trendy stores at high prices. These are known as sweatshops. Besides it being illegal, think about it, it's pretty immoral. I mean, you got some 6-year-old kid in some really impoverished country working in a non-air conditioned, unsafe location, doing work so that the child kid and the child's family can eat for that day. That's pretty low. And then we turn around, I say we as Westerners, we turn around and we sell those products for hundreds of dollars. I mean, it's just not right. So if we find out that someone is intentionally using sweatshops to basically manufacture their product so that they can sell it, at much higher cost, then that's certainly something we would investigate as a crime. Okay. Oh, let's see. I already gave you guys Abscam, the Abscam case, in the last email. So study up on that. It's kind of an interesting case. The FBI case, of course, where several congressmen were caught in a sting. Trying to basically get some inducement from, or bribes, I guess, from a wealthy Arab sheik. The funniest thing in the world about this is that the term Abscam, they literally called it, this company, Abscam. I guess the FBI does have a little bit of a sense of humor. The second funny thing about this is I guess they didn't have a person of any particular Persian descent or Arab descent, whichever you prefer, to play the decoy sheik. So they used a Mexican-American agent, I believe, which is kind of funny if you think about it. And that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job in fraud, when I do go after guys and maybe use a different personality or title, we get to kind of out-con the con men. So whenever you got guys doing sneaky stuff, kind of, inappropriate stuff, it's kind of fun to be able to kind of pull the wool over their eyes. In this case, like I said, this guy wasn't even Persian in any way, or Arab. So anyhow, I want you to read up a little bit more on Abscam, okay? The last thing I want to talk about before we close out the lecture is identity theft. Identity theft. How big of a problem is it? Well, it pretty much is like the biggest crime on the planet Earth. That's how big of a problem it is. Um, I'm sure at some point in time you have or will be affected by identity theft. The latest, I guess, um, most reputable statistics are saying that about 10 million Americans have been hit with identity theft. I've been hit with identity theft a few times. It turns out to be about, they say 1 in 30, but I speculate it's more because there's a lot of folks who have been hit with identity theft who don't even know yet that they're victims. So it's literally pretty much the number one crime on the planet Earth. Good news is that as the topic we started off with, gray area crimes, is that you're covered. If you begin, so I remember 20, 25 years ago, if you're a victim of identity theft, that was a bad, bad, bad thing. And they even made Lifetime movies about it. Oh my gosh, I'm a victim of identity theft, and all the banks are coming at me, and they're trying to put me in jail, and all this kind of stuff. Well, things have changed. We have regulation, the U.S. Banking Code. We have a bunch of different identity theft protection laws. And you're pretty much covered. If you do become a victim of identity theft, the first thing you should always do is make a police report, always within the jurisdiction you live in. So someone steals your identity in Schwangau, Austria, okay, which can happen. That's where Mozart was born, by the way. And you don't have to call Schwangau police, okay? You could actually go down to the Riverside Police Department, let them know, hey, my identity was stolen, but I'm a resident of Riverside. Therefore, I'm requesting you guys take a identity theft police report. We are obliged to do that. We are mandated to do that. So I've seen this happen, and I think it's partly just because folks may not know the law that well. But I've heard a few agencies who, you need to go to Kentucky you need to call the Kentucky police, even though you reside in Riverside, to make that police report because identity theft occurred in Kentucky. Not true. If that ever happens to you, ask to speak to a supervisor. Keep going up the chain because it's absolutely not true. The law says if you have a incident of identity theft, that you can make that report within your jurisdiction. If you want to make it in Kentucky, I guess you can, but the law was created this way so that we would not re-victimize a victim. Okay, so we're saying about 1 in 30 Americans are hit with identity theft, about 10 million a year. It's probably much more now. Pretty much the number one crime on the planet. And that you could make a police report with your jurisdictional agency of residence where you live. Okay. So like I said, we're getting close, folks. Trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. No, we have, so this will be part of our next quiz, and we'll have a test coming up. And then the test is comprehensive all the way back. And then, of course, our final exam. You guys have been doing pretty darn good on the test and quizzes. The one thing I'll say is that please review your notes, review the emails, do your reading. And we should be able to get through the rest of this with no problem, okay? So I'll see you guys soon. Take care.